I'm super excited to fill you guys in. And so today's interaction is going to surround growing, requiring change and transition. So, a lot of times, many of us are getting caught up in the seasons of the previous and not knowing how to move forward into the current season. And so, a lot of that does require a lot of intentional prayer and practicing letting go and relinquishing the past. There are a lot of different testaments as far as this platform goes. And one of those is the fact that in order for you to release something, a lot of times our Heavenly Father will place on your heart a reason why He's releasing those things. And so it has to do with you trusting Him, it has to do with you. Increasing, it has to do with you being elevated, it has to do with you being promoted, it has to do with you switching roles a lot of the times, and we don't understand that. And a lot of the way that our minds work is if we can't see the full picture, we're less likely to be propelled forward and understand what that wavelength looks like. But I'm here just a living testimony to tell you that sometimes when you backtrack or you dibble in an old season or an old way of doing things, it can hinder you from moving forward into new things. And so, just within my marriage, there were a lot of different areas that I was trying to hold on to while I was saying I wanted something new. And a part of that came by me just finally just giving it over to him and saying, you know what, I keep praying for the same area. I keep praying for the improvements. I keep praying for the change. I keep praying for the growth. I keep praying for new things to take place. Yet I'm holding on to this same old mental idea of how things once were. But when you desire change, it requires you to grow. And a part of that growth means that you're not going to know and you're not going to understand, or it's not going to look like it did previously. And so I just talked about, in just a really less than 2 minutes, a previous live segment, um, how sometimes the environment can play a huge factor in you seeing clearly in spiritual attacks, in you just coming in alignment with assignments that were never meant to be assigned to you because of your fleshly desire to be in a circumstance that's going to allow you to be in control. And a lot of times, spiritually speaking, when you're growing spiritually, you're not going to be the one that's in control. You're going to be called and required to be obedient, but you're not going to be able to maybe identify a lot of things. Hi, Demarius. Hi, Samo. And so a lot of that requires you to grow, but in an aspect of you not understanding what comes next. And so even when you don't understand what comes next, spiritually speaking, you have the ability to be able to pray. You have the ability to write down the things that you may be struggling with and to tackle them one by one. You don't have to get overwhelmed. So, growth does require change. And a lot of the times, your atmosphere is toxic. A lot of the times, the people in the company that you keep is toxic. So, make sure that you're examining all of this stuff. Hi, Marius. But yeah, make sure that your atmosphere is not toxic. Make sure that the company that you keep is not toxic. Make sure that the things that you're even encouraging yourself in are not toxic. Because a lot of times we get outside of character, myself included, when you try to do things that go against what you already possess. And what I mean by that is you try to integrate too many things at once. And so because of that, you want to, incorporate things that you would never incorporate. And so by you doing that, you're getting out of alignment with your assignment. Because my assignment, even though I may carry the same or similar aspects of a mantle of other people, it's not going to be the same walk. It's not going to be, it's not going to look identical to someone else's journey. And so let that be a lesson to some of you guys that are watching. Your journey is not going to be identical to anybody else's journey. I don't care even if you do, just like for a student that goes through college, you may have the same degree, but you may take classes in a different order. You may have different professors. You may be required to do extensive math courses and you still end up with a degree, but another person may be required to do extensive science courses. So just because your journey looks different than someone else's, don't try to change your assignment to fit their narrative. It doesn't work that way. And a lot of times we offer and invite in challenges, obstacles, hardships, spiritual blocks, spiritual attacks, even because we are trying to fit a mold of what we think the standard is asking us to fit. So spiritually speaking, we know everything is spiritual here on this platform because that's what it is. It's a spiritual platform. But with that being the case, you understand that you should not be trying to force fit yourself to look like anybody else's. This is why we're individual. This is why we're not a blueprint. This is why you have that individuality that you've been gifted from the heavenly realm. So if you've been gifted this individuality, then why not operate in that? Why not let yourself be exemplified and shining through? Why not be that person that is going to stand out instead of blending in? That's what you're called to do. You're called to, hi, Abby. You're called to stand out. You're called to be different. So, we are actually talking about how growing requires, when you're changing, it requires growth. Hi, Logan. And so, as we have a lot of different people kind of joining now, we're talking about how different growth requires different challenges and how challenges actually require you to grow. And so, just not replicating what you see somebody else do, because I know like a lot of people are struggling right now with finding their identity. A lot of students have graduated, a lot of people are without work, so you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to do things but by the old standards, so by the ways that you may have seen other people do them, and you don't ever want to be caught up or consumed in what someone else is doing. So that's what I mean when I say, spiritually speaking, your assignment is your assignment, and you're going to get to your end goal how it's meant for you to get to your end goal. You don't have to replicate or put on the face of someone else to try to imitate or, so to speak, become something you're not. So I have quite a few people. All right. So hi, Logan. Hi, Mrs. DWP. Hi, Jay. And so, yeah. So it's like, you can't require yourself to receive your level of success basing it off of someone else's abilities. So when you start to do that, now you're imitating. And that's called imposter syndrome, guys. You don't ever want to be known as an imposter. You want to be the trendsetter. You don't want to become trendy, so to speak. I'm well, Logan. How are you? And so I always tell people, my students, my clients, I don't follow trends. I set them. And, in order for you to feel confident in that, it takes a certain level of confidence. But if you're a natural born leader, if you were given that quality, then you understand that very well. You understand that it's not easy. You understand that a lot of times you're going to be tested in a lot of ways that other people are not going to be tested. But it also builds your character. It also builds your ability to stand within storms, because storms are inevitable, guys. I don't care what people are telling you. I'm pretty sure that everybody's kind of seeing that right now. You're going to go through some storms. You're going to go through storms. You're going to go through challenges, and you're going to go through growth, whether you like it or not. So why not go ahead and prep yourself and prepare yourself, position yourself, equip yourself with the necessary tools to be able to withstand the storms? So a lot of that looks like doing things outside of the box, thinking outside of the box, making sure that you're not just imitating other people. And so what ways can you do things that have already been done but are coming back around to you that didn't work the last time? What are your new ideas? What are your thoughts? What does your thought process look like? Are you taking yourself seriously if you're expecting other people to take you seriously? Because how can I take you seriously if you don't even take yourself seriously? I just shared a testimony about that, about how someone just really wants to call themselves a boss, but you're not exemplifying any of those things. And when you're called out on about it, it's everybody else's fault but yours. You have to take accountability. That's a part of leadership. A part of leadership means that you're examining yourself, you're able to take constructive criticism, and that you're able to exemplify being that person that you want people to look up to. There's a quote that I love, and it goes, I always want my students to be better than I am as a teacher. The teacher's student should always be better than she or he. Because if that's not the case, then what are you teaching? You're teaching them to be you. If my students are only as good as I am, I'm teaching them to be me. I'm not teaching them to put their individual abilities on something that I'm educating them in. And that should not be what the case is. You should not ever try to teach someone to be you. You should be encouraging them to be, yeah, it is. And so, it can be tough. It can be tough to teach others. It can be tough to to even demonstrate this level of courage, this level of integrity. Um, and it can be also overwhelming at times, especially when people don't like to take accountability. And that's kind of what you see now. It's always somebody else's fault. It's never the person that is making mention of, or the person that's supposed to be taking accountability, and then people get frustrated. But you're called to walk different. You're called to bear your light different. So you can't ever allow yourself to come down to a level and start to perform on a level that's beneath what you carry. And I don't care. You can call me overconfident for however you want to word it. But I'm not bringing myself down to a value that's underneath where I've already been proven to be worth. And so when it is in a workplace and there are consequences and repercussions for the way you conduct yourself, maintaining a level of professionalism, coming up with a game plan, making sure that you're praying about these things, guys, because at the end of the day, if it's already established, it's going to be something that flows. You're not going to receive friction. It's not going to be something that you're kind of having to fight tooth and nail. And then making sure that you make that smooth exit, because it's going to save your character. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They abruptly leave things prematurely. They don't do things in a conductive manner. And when you finally move forward, it's like, okay, well, you just made yourself look bad because you didn't exemplify the same level of professionalism that you claimed that you had. So don't be like the people that you are trying to give constructive criticism that are not receptive, because at the end of the day, you're meant to stand out, not blend in. And so, for those of you that are watching, are you struggling with anything right now that you may, feel like is just kind of a hindering point, and that may be hindering you from growing? What are your questions? What are your resolves? Do you have a resolution? Have you actually been examining what areas are you exploring to improve on? Because we all have room for improvement. So what are some things that you'd like to improve on? JJ plays. So yeah, what are some of the things that you'd like to improve on? What are some of the things that you need work on? Development. Communication is big, guys. That goes across the board. Communication is basically one tool that everybody needs. If you don't communicate well, then how can you expect for yourself to be taken seriously? How can you even relay what you're trying to communicate if you don't know how to communicate effectively? And so a lot of people get offended when people tell them things, and it's not meant to be an attack, but because they've had traumatic experiences with communicating ineffectively with people, it turns into something that naturally they end up perceiving as an attack. And so working on communication would be probably my top priority when it comes to a lot of different things, because it covers so many different areas. So by a show of hands, does anybody struggle with communication? Do you guys struggle with communication? And if so, how? What's one of the ways that you struggle with communicating? What is one of the ways that you struggle with communicating? Is it within a workplace? Is it when it comes to problematic areas? Is it within your relationships? What do you struggle with? Communication, guys. Communication is key. It is a key. It unlocks a lot of different areas. And when you learn that and when you start to implement that, you see the benefit. You see the benefit of listening to interpret instead of listening to respond. Because that's a communication barrier when you only listen to respond. Nobody ever wants to just be the person that has to listen all the time. So you want to be able to reciprocate, and be receptive to what's being said. Because if that was the case, if we weren't meant to communicate, then we would be speaking to ourselves. So communicating effectively is something that a lot of people struggle with, and they don't know where to start. So what are some challenges that you find present in you communicating effectively with others? Is it in relationships? Is it in your career? Is it in just, exemplifying who you really want to be perceived as versus how people perceive you? What areas do you struggle with communicating? What are some things that you've struggled in the past with as it relates to communication? Because if you desire to if you desire to have a conversation with someone, but they not necessarily understand what it is that you're communicating about, then it's kind of, yeah, it has no point. It has no purpose, because you can talk to your blue in the face, but if the person that's on the receiving end does not understand what you're saying, then it's in vain. It's no reason for the conversation to be had, because nothing's going to get accomplished. Nothing's going to be done. And so when you think scripturally speaking of great communicators, let me see who my top communicators would be. Scripturally speaking, a great communicator would definitely have to be, I'm going to say, mm, I'll say maybe Moses. Definitely Moses. I would also say Deborah. Deborah is a favorite. If you have ever watched any of my previous videos, I would definitely say Deborah had a great way of communicating. She was very assertive. She was very confident. You typically see people with great confidence communicate well because they mean what they say and they say what they mean. And often, a lot of times, when you have a person that's confident, they are typically naturally good at leading. So that means that they've gone through a lot of different challenges or have had a great deal of preparation. And so they're comfortable in operation. And when you're comfortable in operation, it allows you to receive feedback and to implement that change that's necessary when you receive the feedback. So communicating effectively either way is going to require you to have that confidence, for you to be able to comprehend what other people are trying to tell you, and asking open-ended questions. Guys, there's no such thing as a crazy question. I hate that people feel stupid when they ask questions, but at the end of the day, a person questioning something means that they're actually considering what's being said and they want to understand. And so that's a disconnect for me when people have a problem with people asking questions. The reason that the person is asking a question is because they want to clarify something that's misunderstood. That's a part of communication. And so when you learn to communicate effectively, then it builds a bridge. It builds a bridge to get over miscommunicated areas. That is what miscommunication is. The areas of miscommunication means that you don't have the ability to understand what someone else is saying to you as an individual. And so when you build a bridge of communication, it eliminates the in between of miscommunication. So communication bridges miscommunication. So there are gaps when someone doesn't understand something, when you're speaking about something. But then when you build that bridge and learn to communicate effectively, you're building that bridge for that miscommunication, which is the disconnect. So, what are some ways that you struggle? What are some things that you struggle with? What are some areas that you have had miscommunicated to you, or that you may have miscommunicated in your inability to communicate effectively? Did it come from childhood trauma? Did it come from the not being heard, or not even being encouraged to use your voice? Because that's what you find a lot of times too, is that people have not been taught to use their voice. And so they remain silent, even when they're uncertain or unclear on something. And then it leads to a problematic occurrence when they could have spoken up had they had the confidence. But like we said, not everybody's meant to be a natural born leader. Not everybody has confidence. Not everybody has the ability to just be assertive. So it leads to, the continuation of the miscommunication down the line. So you didn't understand, you didn't say anything, you were a little bit timid, so you didn't speak up, and then you carried on or continued on in the same patterns of behaviors, and it still led to an even greater length of miscommunication. So with that being the case, what areas do you struggle with? What are the areas that you struggle with? If you had to check in this week alone, what are some areas that you struggle with communicating with? What are some areas? Hmm? What are some areas? Mm-hmm. Ex- Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What are some areas? Yeah. And thank you, Miss Diaz. DWP. Yep. Thank you for Demarius and Logan. Elisa May. Yaneri. I hope I'm saying that right. But thank you guys for taking the time to comment. Okay. All right, guys. So, well, I want you guys to be interactive, but at the same time, I want you guys to um, definitely be able to communicate effectively because it builds that bridge. And so, if you're struggling with communicating effectively, know that it carries over to other areas outside of the actual area that you're communicating ineffectively about. So, you know, yeah. Mhm. So take time to build yourself up. Take time to pour in. You know what? Scripturally speaking, let's take the time to examine what our Father says about communicating. Because I got time today. So let's talk about it. Communicating. So we know that a gentle answer turns away wrath. That's practicing self control. Okay. Matthew 5:37 reads, but let your communication be yes. Your let your communication be your yes be your yes, and your no be your no. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. So that means playing games in your communication. Second Samuel says, and Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, you sought for David in times past that he might be your king. That was clear communication about them and what they desired. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, be not deceived. Evil speakings corrupt good manners. So evil company corrupts good character. It's all about your communication. Ephesians 4:29 reads, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to you use to your use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto thee. James 1:19, wherefore my dear brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Controlling your mouth. James 1:20, for the wrath of man doth not accomplish the righteousness of the Most High. So we know that your wrath doesn't accomplish the righteousness of our Heavenly Father. So watching how you communicate. Body language too, guys, because that's a part of communication. Ephesians 4:26, be angry but do not sin. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Don't allow your anger to carry over into the next day. Ephesians 4:31, let all bitterness and anger and wrath, crying and evil speaking be put away from you with all maliciousness. All of it, guys. He doesn't say some of it, he says all. Ephesians 4:32, be ye courteous to one another and tenderhearted, freely forgiving one another, even as the Most High um, has freely forgiven you. Philemon 1:6, that the fellowship of thy faith may be made effectual, and that whatsoever good thing is in you through the Son may be known. So you can only make it known if you communicate that. Colossians 3:8, but now put ye away even all these things, wrath, anger, maliciousness, cursed speaking, filthy speaking out of your mouth. So it's talking about the ways that you communicate and the ways that you choose to present yourself and be filled with things that are supposed to be of the spirit of light, but In actuality, if you allow these things in through your gateways or whatever ways that you, or the avenues that you're taking or allowing to come in, then it's going to end up sabotaging who you are anyway. So, but now, put ye away even all these things: wrath, anger, maliciousness, cursed speaking, filthy speaking out of your mouth. And a part of that healthy decision to choose to grow is going to require you to stop and refrain from the jokes. And a lot of people have questions about this verse in particular, because when it talks about filthy speaking, that a part of that means that you're responding to the crude and toxic jokes or the little corny jokes or whatever, but it may be talking about dark humor. And so you're coming in agreement with that if you're laughing at it. Colossians 4:5, walk wisely towards them that are without and redeem the season. Colossians 4:6, I love. Let your speech be gracious always and powdered with salt, that you may know how to answer every man. So this, a part of this verse, what it's saying is that you have to find the ability to be able to adapt to whoever you're speaking to. So that's that whole little communication bridge. If one person receives well the way that you speak, but then you come and you say the same thing to another person, you have to have the ability to adapt very well to get that person to receive whatever it is that you're saying in good communication. So at the end of the day, you can speak to different types of people in different settings, but still be received well. It shouldn't be that you can only speak to one type of person, because if that's the case, then you might as well just be speaking to yourself. You don't need to go amongst people because you only have one way of communicating, and that's not effective. It's ineffective. And so Proverbs 15:5, this is one of my favorites. A soft answer putteth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And so we know that when you're gentle with your words, when you're gentle with your speech, when you're considerate of your communication style, then people are more likely to receive it well. But sometimes it doesn't mean that everybody's going to receive it well. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is the fact that once you learn how to communicate effectively with people, you would consider what they're going to receive versus you getting your point across. And this is something that I had to learn, just being honest. Sometimes it's not about what you say, but it's about how you say it. Not what you say, but how you say it. So choose wisely as to how you're going to say things, how you want to be received, how you're exemplifying yourself, how you're going to carry yourself. And let that be mindful of that in every type of situation. Okay? He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. That's Proverbs 18:13. So if you're responding to something and you don't fully understand, then that means that you're acting foolishly. That's what he's saying. It's folly. It brings up a shame. So because you're answering something that you haven't even dissected yet. Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat of the fruit thereof. Proverbs 16:24, fair words are as a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul, and the health to the bones. So we know fair words are as a honeycomb is sweet. So that means it's very sweet. Fair words are very sweet. It works. It goes hand in hand, and it's health to the bones. It is something that's nutritional for edification, for building up, for pouring in, for propelling, for all of those different things. So yeah. So that's a little bit about communication, guys. But yeah, so I appreciate you guys for taking the time, like I said, to come on and examine this little walk with me. But yeah, go for it and communicate well. Learn to build those bridges of miscommunication because it's beneficial to you in so many ways. And don't be so quick to respond. Try to absorb it, digest it, reflect on it, and then respond. Listen with the intent to interpret, not just with the intent to respond. And so that's all I have for you guys today. I look forward to the next message with you guys, and thank you again, and take care.